Good evening, this is Ryan Knoll, and here's my state issued ID. So I have a question. Who all has drank water today? I would largely expect everybody to raise their hand or to say they've had water in some form or another. I've started researching this charitable organization quite some time ago because I'm really into protecting the environment, and this organization is called American Rivers. And what they do is they study different ways to protect our watersheds and our rivers, obviously. Um, we really need to think about our rivers for our future generations. They're deteriorating at a rapid rate. Um, just with all the different chemicals now that we're manufacturing, all the different processes and technology and pollution due to technological advances, the waters are getting more and more polluted each year. So it's going to be a really important thing to contribute to in our lifetime for sure. So that's why if we do something now, it can save us a lot of time down the road. I have a little bit of experience at work with wastewater treatment, and that is a really fascinating process where we take dirty water or used water and we get it back to potable conditions or just good enough to release it back into the rivers. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but a lot of water that's used in manufacturing or either water that goes down the sewage sanitary lines ends up going to a wastewater treatment plant where they treat the water and they end up releasing it into the rivers, which you then go swim into. Sometimes that water that comes out of those plants are great, and other times if the county or whoever's treating the water is having issues, it might not be always to par. So that's something to think about, and it's a good reason to begin to consider contributing to American Rivers. But anyway, I'm going to get into the first point that I have here, and that is 44% of access to waterways are too polluted for swimming or fishing, and that is from American Rivers. They cited that due to their research, and that is almost half of all waterways or rivers are too polluted for swimming. And I know even at my local river down in the city, they have signs up that say it's not safe to swim, it's contaminated, there's bacteria in it, and it's unsafe, which kind of stinks because a lot of people like to take their animals there, their dogs, or just go swim or rafting down it, and the river's too polluted for the government to take any liability. So yeah, it's safe. So it's kind of a shame that we've deteriorated to this point, but I thought that statistic was mind-blowing. And I want to think about, many of you have probably grown up over the years, maybe being taken down to the river or waterways and fishing with maybe your grandparents or something like that, or swimming growing up as a kid in the rivers or in the waterways. And now you have to worry about what health risk you have if you were to do that now. And a lot of times, in the past, it wasn't as bad as it is now. Now, not all rivers. Some rivers were still polluted back then, but now, 44%. So something to think about. But think about all those memories that the people of our current generation and future generations won't be able to take part in just due to our pollution. That's a big point that I want to make there and for you to all think about during the rest of this speech. The fish and the other wildlife that rely on our rivers, think about how many animals drink from our rivers on a daily basis as their main source of water. And if it's polluted with chemicals or other toxins, we're not only hurting ourselves, but we're hurting our wildlife. And that is, I don't know who could feel good about doing that. This pollution also in our rivers that goes to our waterways, it fuels our oceans, right? So it feeds into our oceans and it contributes to our ever-growing ocean pollution issue. I'm sure you've seen pictures lately of different parts of oceans throughout the world where it's just full of plastic bottles and toxins and nets and all types of other things that are not supposed to be in our oceans. So think about that as well. The rivers don't just affect the rivers, it affects our oceans as well, and then pretty much every water source that we have. Rivers are not just critical as a source of water for wildlife, but for ourselves as well. And you may not realize this, but the water that comes out of your sink and shower likely originated from a local river or watershed and was treated at one of these wastewater treatment plants I told you about, and now it's coming through your pipes and into your bottle of water. So think about that as well, that what you pollute, and if you do not help clean the rivers and keep them from being contaminated, you will ultimately be drinking that water, whether it's at your house or maybe at a restaurant or someone else that doesn't always use bottled water. So you want to think about that and how that's going to affect you, the end user, and not just the environment as well. This water, of course, is treated and it has to be held to different standards. I know you're probably thinking that in your mind. Well, yeah, it has to be treated and all, but it comes out as potable water. But the technology that we have currently is not on track to be able to keep up with the amount of pollution we're seeing in the recent studies that we've done now. So we need to think about a long-term plan to mitigate the risk that we have with pollution of the rivers, as our technology is not going to be able to keep up with our pollution. Another quick fact is that 97% of Earth's water is located in the oceans, right? Rivers and streams make up 0.001 of Earth's water, but 65% of our drinking water. So that just shows you how precious our rivers really are to us and how much they provide for our drinking water. Without clean water, it's very hard to have a civilized or developed society. Think about all the places on Earth that don't have access to clean drinking water, and think about how many struggles that creates for them and gets in the way of them being able to be productive, to advance through different industrialization and manufacturing, and just level up their society. Without access to clean water, it's a big hindrance. You have to waste a lot of time just finding something to drink and cook with. So think about that as well. But yes, 65% of all of our drinking water comes from rivers and streams, but it only makes up 0.001% of Earth's water content. So we really need to make a global effort to protect our fresh water sources, and that one of the best ways to do that is who I've quoted, AmericanRivers.org. It should be a great charitable contribution place that you should look into funding and donating some of your money. But here's another thing that is probably not talked about too often, but is becoming a large issue. As I stated earlier, technology brings along different advances in different fields, and one of those is the medical field as well. So even though the technology for cleaning and treating our water is advancing, the rivers are becoming more polluted every year. How much longer until we have a clean water shortage? Think about that. Here's what you can do to make a difference according to Mad River. And think about this right here. Like I talked about, the medical technology is increasing. Think about all the medications that are being prescribed each year that maybe weren't 50 years ago. Now, there's some medications that are, excess. Okay, you got some painkillers, you don't use them, you flush them down the toilet so nobody, takes them or abuses them in the household. Or just the amount of people eating antidepressants or hormones, birth control, stuff like that. Some of that is excreted out of the body into, the sanitary sewer lines, and it goes to these treatment plants, right? If we cannot all the time pull out all those pollutions and toxins, pharmaceutical toxins. So if we can't get them all out of the treatment plant that it goes to, then where does it end up? It ends up back into the rivers and into the environment, and then the cycle just continues and continues, and then we have really no way to filter that out. So you're seeing like the rise of, maybe pseudoestrogen compounds in the water. There's been traces of birth control, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications found in the rivers and waters and all that type of stuff. So we are making a big impact even with our pharmaceuticals that we're doing now. And because I've stated multiple times, we can't keep up. Our technology cannot really purify the water the way it needs to be purified. So to protect the rivers, here's what you can do. Back on the main point, don't flush medications down the toilet, and that's what I just did describe to you. You want to limit your pesticide use as well. Going around spraying Roundup seeps down into the aquifers in the earth, and then it gets back down into your wells or back into your rivers where everything ends up flowing, right? And it pollutes them. And then you can hear this in the news about Roundup giving people cancer and leukemia and all kinds of other terrible diseases. So that's a thing you really want to limit, is pesticide usage as well. And another easy one is use biodegradable products that will reduce the amount of harsh chemicals headed to our waterways and rivers. So consider all these facts that I've talked about when you're thinking about donating to your next charitable organization, and I hope you will see that water is so important, and the little small things that have become, let's just say, part of our daily life and our habits are really making a big impact on our water sources. And it might not hurt us now, we might not feel the pain now, but think about 100 years down the road, when our children have to deal with these issues, or when you can't go outside to swim in rivers, or when we're having trouble treating our waters, or where our water sources are getting so tough, and it's going to burden us as a society for moving forward. So if we take action now by contributing to an organization like AmericanRivers.org, you can ensure that we'll have clean drinking water, and we can focus on things that we really want to focus on making progress in, instead of having to go back and figure out how we can clean water because of how we've polluted it so much. Thank you.